South African Depression and Anxiety Group, SADAG, says suicide is the second leading cause of death among university students after accidents. In 2018 alone, Wits University, for example, has recorded 3 successful suicides by students. And in just the last week, one jumped off a high-rise building in the Johannesburg CBD, whilst 2 others are in hospital right now, fighting for their lives after attempts through poisoning. With year-end exams underway, many students are under extreme pressure and some of them are simply not coping. Now there are calls for exams to be postponed. Well, the Dean of Student Affairs at Wits University, Jerome September, joins us now. Jerome, a very good evening to you. I mean, this is an absolutely unfortunate discussion to be having with you. But what leads a seemingly together student making the decision to end their life? What are the triggers?
A host of things. Societal pressure, the reality of our tough life, the pressure of university life, financial issues, academic issues, relational issues, a loss in support, crime, trauma. It's a hugely complex issue. And so there isn't one single factor that leads to a person deciding to end their lives.
And of course, given our particular history,
Absolutely.
many of these students are in many families the first people to go to a tertiary
Absolutely.
institution. There's no support for them in terms of their structures around them, the people that they can turn to when they face tough times.
And not because people do not want to support them often, but because families do not know how to support a first in-family, university-going person. It is just simply that you send your child off and you hope that in 3-4 years' time they will return with a degree, which will mean an improvement in life. In the meantime, students are going through a host of difficulties, adjusting and just getting into life.
I mean, in a sense, it also highlights the issues that were raised by the fallist movement. And incidentally, I'm reliably told you are the one to coin that word, so you're familiar with that struggle. Put this then in that context.
Well, what the fallists were saying in all the various iterations were that our institutions are not sufficiently able to welcome students. They're not sufficiently able to create the sort of environments within which they can thrive. And so we've been grappling with what that means. Traditionally, institutions have been set up to provide a basic service, and then we refer, and you rely on your family, on the church, and so on, to be able to take it further.
And it's a numbers game, isn't it? I mean, you're looking at an institution, that's nearly 40,000 strong. How on earth do you begin, as the Dean of Student Affairs at Wits, to make sure no one gets left behind?
Well, 37,500 students, all with a range of needs. Big number. All with a range of needs, all coming from very different backgrounds. And so what we do is to put the basic services in place. So we have a very strong first-year experience program where first years are assisted with their adjustment into the institution. There's a counseling service. There are services at the residences. There's an emergency call line.
So why are they still taking their lives?
Because it is complex. Because a young person gets to a point where they feel that this is the only way out. And it's complex because it is individualized. You may respond very differently to a particular set of circumstances
or interventions
than what I would.
So someone will throw this at you and they'll say, look, I mean, tertiary education is something obviously experienced by students all over the world. These pressures aren't necessarily unique to South Africa. Why is the problem happening here? The real issue is that our institutions are failing these students.
Well, I would tell you that this is a global problem. If you were to look at the United States, if you were to look at Britain, all over the world, student suicides are on the increase, mental health issues are on the increase. And it also has to do with the kinds of society that we're living in. Throw into the pot, for example, social media. The distance, the false belief that I'm connected to a world
when in fact you become more isolated.
Absolutely. And then also add stigma.
So student bodies are beginning to complain, though, that institutions of higher learning are not responding to what they need. They're not hearing their cries. What's your response to that?
We are. There's more that we can do, but we are. Just in the last week, I've received over 200 suggestions from students and staff around what to do.
What are they telling you?
They're telling us exam pressure. Can you please spread the exam timetable a bit? They're telling us please bring in more counselling services. They're telling us please increase the sporting facilities available.
Since you and I were at student for the first time, 20 years ago? What's changed?
Well, the world has become more complex, and we have to accept that the world is more complex, that young people do not have the sorts of networks that we may have had.
Yes, but you and I could tell those stories of people who come from difficult backgrounds, where against the odds we even made it to university and afterwards. I mean, this is the thing that a lot of older folks are battling to come to terms with. They're saying, listen, we all know the rags to riches stories, but why now?
Well, let's take the example of Wits. Over the last 20 years, Wits have changed dramatically in who the students are. And that's a key factor, that the students who are increasingly entering our institutions do not necessarily have the sort of networks and backgrounds and connections that we or that others may have had.
Because the system was set up for people from affluent backgrounds.
Absolutely. And back to my earlier point, that traditionally our services had been put up to provide a basic intervention and refer out, and you then rely on your own network.
And for some of these students, it's a matter of life and death, because after weeks of being hungry, how on earth do you then begin to cope with the pressure of upcoming exams, for example?
And when I can't call home and say to mom and dad or whoever, please send me 200 Rand.
Yet you're saying many of them are beginning to ask for help, and that surely is encouraging.
Extremely encouraging. We've had an influx of students coming in saying, I need assistance, and that is good. But we have to, in the context of 37,500 students, we have to reach the ones who are stuck in a corner and who are not reaching out. And that's the key question for us. How do we take the interventions to scale so that we reach everyone?
There is also a sense that we need a multifaceted approach. You know, we need government, we need the Department of Higher Education, we need all kinds of role players and stakeholders. We need alumni to come and participate in the programs that many institutions would have. Is that happening?
Not at the scale that we're hoping it would. We've had that happening. We're increasingly getting people offering their assistance, but we need more. There has to be a societal response. University is not an island. We're part of a community, and that's part of the complexity. That it's the issues that a student face on campus, together with the issues that they face in the world beyond the campus, and the interplay of the two. So we've got to all come together. The churches must join us. NGOs must join us. Families must join us. Government must. Business must. It is a societal issue.
And yet for prospective employers, it's all about, you know, what your results look like, where you can come in and fit in our system, and it's all about the bottom line.
Many of them are coming to the party. I think many people struggle with what contribution can I make, and we're asking people to join the conversation.
So there's been now a call for exams to be delayed at least because of this. Where are we on that?
Exams will not be delayed. Exams cannot simply be postponed because there are a number of processes that will be impacted upon. It is marking, it is external examiners, it is international students who are affected, it is graduation, it is schedules. It is even students who have written to me over the last few days saying to me, I am depressed. Part of my hope, part of what I'm looking forward to is the fact that in 2 weeks' time, I'm going home to my family, and that's what I'm holding on to. So please do not postpone.
Perhaps it's an unfeeling one, perhaps it's a cynical point of view. There is a view that people might say, aha, there we go. We were waiting for it. It is exam time, another issue to strike about.
Not at all. Not at all. This has not been my experience. I think the cry for assistance, even the cry to postpone exams, comes from a genuine place. We have a problem, and we must acknowledge that we have a problem, and we must address the problem. And these are part of what students are coming to the party with, in saying maybe postponing the exams will help. Maybe that's a way of preventing a life. But what we have done is to increase the support, there is a helpline. We're retraining staff, and we're doing a host of interventions to help students through this particular period.
And of course, you and the other institutions are sharing information and knowledge and learning as you go along the way.
Absolutely, learning from each other, even across the waters.
All right, that's the Dean of Student Affairs at the University of the Witwatersrand, Jerome September.